Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants. Welcome back to the podcast, brothers. This is Rhit Moore, past master and current secretary at Fort Worth Lodge 148.
This is Billy Hamilton, senior steward for 148.
And this is Gabriel Jagush, master mason with Fort Worth 148. We were going to have Grant Gates, the junior warden, on, but in the middle of our pre-recording prep time, his modem died on us. So our condolences to the family of Grant's modem, and we wish that we could bring Grant on, but there are literal technical difficulties preventing that right now. So,
right, correct.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2.
Yes, you guys charged up after Grand Lodge?
Yes, and that is the subject
definitely.
of this episode. This episode is the 2018 Grand Lodge Digest. We're going to break down the 182nd Grand Annual Communication of the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Texas to y'all.
Break it on down.
Mm-hmm.
Break it on down.
It's going to be good stuff.
Sweet. So I think we had one question we were going to go over and then jump into that, right?
I have this written down as Billy's aunt's question.
You said it right.
I do sometimes say aunt for anybody who's wondering.
We're learning him, boys.
I don't know where that
aunt
came
is
from.
only when you... That's like the pinky out way to say it.
I like it.
Pinky out.
I'm going to sip my tea now.
What you got?
Yeah, so the question is, it was really kind of a statement that my mother-in-law told me about. So my aunt, my wife's aunt, really, she's been involved in Eastern Star for, over 50 years now. She was a Rainbow Girl before that. Her father was super active as a Mason. And the comment she made was she saw all the pictures I had with, these Grand Lodge officers and the Grand Master of Oklahoma and Texas from this weekend. And she sees me constantly posting on Facebook about the different people I meet. And her comment was, I didn't think he had been a Mason long enough to attend these things and meet these people. And so I thought that was a good comment to bring on here for maybe some of the younger Masons who, feel like, they're kind of in awe and they don't know what they can attend or who they can talk to. Mm-hmm. The answer is really anything and anybody, right? If you're a Master Mason, feel free to go to Grand Lodge, or, feel free to go to the Briscoe Workshop or what have you. Feel free to walk up to the Grand Master.
There you go.
They're not going to bite you.
Well, and they actually enjoy meeting newer members of the craft. They really, that's the lifeline of our fraternity. So they welcome that.
And they're super gracious with their time, right? Tommy Chapman was amazing. Right Worshipful Kirby was amazing too. We talked to him after the Grand Lodge as he's loading up his car. He introduced us to his family around. I mean, they're all great, super people to talk to.
Yeah, that was a great little moment. We were walking out and, we just kind of said, congrats, Right Worshipful, and he was like, hey, this is my family. Check out my grandson. He points at his grandson who is young. How old did he say he was? Like early teens, right? And
he's 13.
Like 13, and he's like 6'4" or something like that. It was huge,
Right.
And he's like, check him out. He's only 13. It was great, and he was very friendly, and it was just I've never had. As far as time to talk, I've had I'm not going to say I've never had, but I've had very few interactions where people brushed me off or said, hey, I don't really have the time for this. People make the time for you. They want to get to know you.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're very inclusive.
One of the funnest parts about Grand Lodge is meeting, because it's not only those Grand Lodge officers that are welcoming. It's any brother you meet down there. It was a good time.
It was pretty cool. So yeah, that's one of the things that somebody asked me. How do you know all these people, right? And I said, well, I kind of stumbled into all of this, right? It just kind of started hanging out with people and making friends. And somebody was like, well, how do you know so and so? They're the X of the Y, right? And I said, I literally just hung out with people that introduced us, and that's cool. Like, they're just another brother, really,
Yeah.
Their job is important, but, they're not magically more special because of what they do for the fraternity, Now, are they special? Yeah, but that's usually because they're very talented or very kind or very intelligent or whatever,
Yeah.
But yeah, just I for anyone that's wondering, how to go about it, just stumble into things, be nice to everyone you meet, and you'll meet some really interesting people along the way.
Absolutely.
Right. It's kind of the same thing too. If you have a question of how do you become an officer, how do you get involved in this or that, it's really just be active and travel outside your lodge. If you'll find especially here in the Metroplex, when you go places, there's like a core group of people that you see constantly, and you get to know each other.
No, you're right, because you'll see the same people on a regular basis. So don't be timid.
Yeah, that if anything, that being timid might cause more problems. But not necessarily in a bad way. But you're just never going to get to know people the way that you would like to get to know them. And one of the things that I have heard from, like sometimes you hear this from guys that are in the core groups that you see running around everywhere. What's up with that guy? Like, he's so quiet and he doesn't talk to anyone,
Yeah.
And a lot of times you'll talk to that guy and he's just nervous. Don't be nervous. Just make it happen.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
But let's move on to the general episode content real quick. So, like we said earlier, this is season 2, episode 2. It's the 2018 Grand Lodge Digest Edition. It's, our experience at the 182nd Annual Communication of the Grand Lodge of Texas. The big thing that we need to talk about right off the bat, before we talk about elections or any of the resolutions or anything like that, is the Fraternal Relations Committee report and the vote that resulted in that. Texas is now a state where you can be a state lodge brother or a Prince Hall affiliate lodge brother, and you can just go and sit in the other guy's lodge as long as you have a dues card and a driver's license.
Yeah. You're going to get tried.
That's right.
But, yeah, you can get tried, but, a lot of times people won't ask to try you. They'll just ask to see the dues card, But I've been tried.
But you're supposed to. On our side, I know.
Yeah, I've been tried.
Non-jurisdictional.
But
it's not that tough. Learn your Tyler's Oath.
Yeah,
know your grips and words.
It's a paragraph long, so don't worry about it, brothers. But prior, for anyone who does not have context to this, for a long time, there was no recognition between the Grand Lodge of Texas and the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Texas. And then we had recognition, but no visitation. And then we had visitation, but it was limited. It was like if I wanted to travel to sit in a lodge under the jurisdiction of the United Grand Lodge of England, I'd have to write to our Grand Secretary. He would have to write to their Grand Secretary, and they'd have to talk to the lodge, and there's just a lot of back and forth and a lot of paperwork on both ends. It's like traveling to a different country. And now it's like visiting any other lodge in Texas.
Yeah, so, it used to take the better part of 6 months to go visit a Prince Hall lodge.
And that's if the paperwork went through all the way.
Exactly. And now they've got everything straightened out. They're in the book of lodges constituent, all that's ironed out to where dues card ID and a little bit of Masonic knowledge will get you in to visit a Prince Hall or vice versa, which is very exciting.
And I think it's also important to note, too, that it was approved by both Grand Lodges, both the most worshipful Grand Lodge, Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Texas, as well as the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Texas. So both sides are in agreement with this. So, if you're a Prince Hall Mason interested in coming to our lodge, your Grand Lodge has already approved it. If you're interested in visiting a Prince Hall Lodge, our Grand Lodge has already approved it.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a great thing. I've been a Mason since the late part of 2004, and it's been an issue that's, always been brought up, plagued our fraternity, and within our own brotherhood is what it was, because it was always something, one way or another would get thrown up as a black flag. And to finally pull that down and have full visitation, you're regular, we're regular, we can sit in lodge and do things just like we traditionally have done. It was nice to close that chapter. I mean, because that's a done deal now.
It's been a very big deal.
Well, and
yeah,
right. And it's hard to justify too when one of our big things is the brotherhood of man under the fatherhood of God, and it's hard to say that and then say, but with caveats.
Oh yeah, I mean, because they have a pedigree charter and they meet all the parameters to be regular, and let it be so finally.
Yeah, and kind of the issue that territorial jurisdiction kept getting brought up, or not at Grand Lodge, but sometimes when I discuss Prince Hall with folks, the idea of territorial jurisdiction gets brought up, and that is such a very American concept that really does not exist anywhere else in the world. Like, I'm sure it exists in some places, but you look at everywhere else, like India's got like 5 Grand Lodges operating in it, and they've got a compact, and they all work totally fine. Germany has, the United Grand Lodge of Germany system. It's not a United Grand Lodge, really. It's a system of Grand Lodges that work together.
There's like 4 of them. Yeah.
Yeah, there's 4 of them. And there's the American Canadian Grand Lodge, the Drei Weltkugel Lodge, the English Grand Lodge of Germany, and then I think the German Grand Lodge of Germany. I can't remember. There's a lot of them,
right? And and they don't even follow the same ritual. One is Swedish Rite, one's American Rite, one's Emulation Rite. So
yeah, it can be done, and that was a weird sort of objection when you look at the rest of the world and how they do it. So, but I'm very happy about this.
Absolutely. And I mean, the thing about it is that the Prince Hall fraternity was created so long ago and has such a rich history, to where it's been handed down for so long. That's, it was just basically, created out of a dark part of our history that's blossomed into something beautiful and can't go away now. So I think it's a great step that we've finally put that to bed and fully recognize them and have visitation rights. I think both of our fraternities are going to be the better for it.
We really are, and and so sometimes it's kind of hard to explain to people, like, why this is such a big deal, because this has been kind of the norm for them. Like, why would you not have unrestricted visitation, right? Like, they moved into the future a long time ago, and so we finally joined everyone else in the future, and dang it feels kind of nice. So
yeah, that was a very pivotal moment in my Masonic career. I'll never forget that.
So life is pretty good.
Yeah. Other than that, though, there wasn't much excitement at Grand Lodge.
Yeah, there were a couple of contentious things, but I think we can discuss those real quick. But the second big thing, the election results.
Yes,
our brother from Fort Worth, Ken Curry, now Right Worshipful Ken Curry, has been elected to be elected and installed as the Grand Junior Warden of the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Texas. So, congratulations, Right Worshipful Curry.
Yes.
Thank you so much for everything you've done
definitely.
in Fort Worth so far. And fortunately, his plan is to continue and stay on as the personal representative.
Oh, sweet. So he's going to run the Scottish Rite too.
So he's going to continue staying on at the Scottish Rite in Fort Worth, and I am really happy to hear that. So,
Yeah.
it was very fun, and the election was very well done, and it was a good time. The second election result that we have is Jim Rumsey. He's been elected to the Committee on Work, and we'd like to congratulate. Committee on Work is Right Worshipful as well, right, Rhit?
Yes.
Okay, we'd like to congratulate Right Worshipful Rumsey as well, and that was cool because I'd gotten to know Jim over the past couple months, and I got to the point where I was like, you know what, I'm kind of really pulling for this guy, so
Yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah, I knew all of them pretty well. They were qualified for the job 10 times over, every one.
Yes.
Jim put in a lot of work, as did Joe. I know they both traveled extensively.
Yes.
But, any one of those guys would have been good, but it was good to see hard work pay off. Bring him in, which, I wanted to say too about Ken Curry, his mother lodge, where he's raised, is Hanley Lodge in West Fort Worth, but he is a plural member of Fort Worth 148 as well.
I like it.
And he's our first Grand Master. I'm not for sure the year, but it's been at some point in the 1980s in Tarrant County.
It's been a long time.
Yes, it has.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is exciting. It's always cool to have a hometown brother in the Grand Line. We get to rub shoulders with him more often than most Grandmasters.
Yeah. Now, we can
bump into him.
Now you can do all your wheeling and dealing up close. It'll be good. So basically, right now I want to kind of go through the resolutions. Let's talk, call it a blitz analysis. Maybe we can skip some of them and stuff because some of them weren't that
redistricting and yeah.
So let's see. Number 4, resolution number 4 holdover from 2017. This was a resolution to redirect the 125 from the per capita from the Masonic Home and School to the Grand Lodge Building Maintenance Reserve Fund. Guys, how do you feel about that one? And it, by the way, it passed. So
that was a tough one. That was a real tough one to make a decision on how to vote. But it came down to, for me, years ago, we tried to raise the per capita. I think it was $1.25. It was less than $2, but more than $1. Let me put it that way. And it was to go towards the building fund, and it failed. So we were kind of left in the breeze. Should we, how are we going to take care of this building, the Grand Lodge building, that is? And so, as unfortunate as it is that we had to transfer it from the Masonic Home and School Fund, I think it was a necessary action. It's going to bring in close to $80,000 or a little more dollars a year to help refurbish and take care of that building, which isn't a whole lot, but it's more income coming in than we've had in the past.
Right. And I think, as they mentioned during the debate over the resolution too, it's important to note that the Home and School Fund actually is really well off. And of course, that doesn't deflect away from our responsibilities, but
it is of $100 million.
I didn't see the report this year, but it is substantial. And the thing about it is that it can, I believe that fund can weather, at least 3 or 4 years without that $1.25 per Mason. And we can come back and change it back if we get the building back in order, or we can add it an extra $1.25 for the Masonic Home and School. Because there's a reason that fund's so big. We've slowly and surely added to it over years of time. And of course, the sale of the actual building really helped, but it's been properly managed and cared for. So we have to continue, but we're going to have to revisit that in a few years.
Right. And the scuttlebutt are heard in the hallways. And so I don't know the veracity of this was that the investments right now are actually turning a bigger profit just from the investment returns than the expenses are per year. So it's still growing.
It is. And that's the thing is that when you look at the numbers, like we get reports every year at Grand Lodge. I didn't get one this year. I didn't see them, but typically we get a report on it and it is growing. But that's really the only part of the picture and what that fund does, or what it could do, what it's securing, what it might be called in and be used for, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. To where, say we're taking care of so many widows and orphans, and if a bunch gets sick, it's going to really chunk into that fund. You know what I mean? To where from the layman eyes looking from a distance, it looks like it's just $1 bazillion growing hand over fist. But in all actuality, a lot of it is at risk at any given time. There's just so many components to that for us not to come back and add that $1.25 back in or shift it, whatever. And my thoughts are is that it's a shame that we had to do it this way. We should have raised it back then $1.25 for the building fund. But I think come 2 or 3 years, we may have to wait at least 3. I don't know. It's going to be an easier sell to the Grand West to say, hey, we need to add $1.25 to our per capita go to the home and school. We need to get this back and taken care of.
Right. That's a fair point.
And that's just basically me really reaching for a silver lining, that the fact that we had to do that, because I feel like in my heart of hearts, we had to do that to take care of that building, because I'm just one of those guys that love it. There's a faction out there that don't think we need to maintain and keep it. And it's like, as fun as it sounds meeting around the state at different hotels, there's something about going to that building and the history and the museum and the room we walked in, the memorial for the veterans, with the stained glass.
Yeah.
That was an amazing room.
Yeah, you're not going to get that at a hotel. It's just some kind of aura, if you will, or, something magical about stepping in those halls that, since the 40s, grandmasters have been wheeling and dealing in.
Yeah. And so I really hated to see, part of me really hated to see that vote pass, right? Mm-hmm. But, the fund is taken care of. And the building is not in the best shape. So,
yeah,
but I didn't want to see it pass. But I also recognize the fact that either one would not have been a bad thing,
Right.
Yeah. Bottom line, either way you cut that, it's a jagged pill to swallow. If it didn't pass, it would have hurt. If it did, it's hurt, but hopefully we can come back and sell raising our per capita in a few years to take care of that fund. Because I don't care how much money we have in there, what it grows to, I feel a responsibility of adding to it. You know what I mean? $1.25 is not that much.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
We'll see when we propose that at Grand Lodge one year.
Yeah. So resolution number 1, this was a redistricting. So there's not a whole lot to discuss. It passed. It was a couple lodges out west that got, they're 2 separate districts unified. It was interesting to see some objections to that.
That was our past master, Mark Crockett, up there that was speaking against it. And he had a good, valid point, and I felt bad, but because he was speaking against it, and it did pass.
His point was that the unification of the districts was possibly an effort from some of the larger lodges to put pressure on the smaller lodges to merge with the larger lodges. So
yeah,
I thought that was kind of interesting.
Right, and it was interesting to note that smaller district only had 2 lodges, and both of them were against it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to me, that does seem like their fight just got a lot harder, I guess, and that
they got to hold strong. because if they got the guys, they can keep that charter. They can't force you to merge. Just keep on keeping on out there, Mark.
Yep. If that's not what your lodge wants to do, that's not what your lodge wants to do. So
you got it. Hold strong.
Let's talk about resolution number 2. I wanted to see this one pass. This resolution basically says, so Texas doesn't really have an official past master's jewel or anything, right? But this resolution says, whenever a master of the lodge needs to vacate the East, usually for degree work or whatever, somebody has to assume his jewel, right? If he is vacating it, right? Maybe you have the master, he opens up, but there's a more proficient past master who confers the degree for the lodge. This one says, hey, if they have a past master's jewel on their collar, they don't have to swap out with the worshipful master's jewel. The past master's jewel should be sufficient because it implies that this person, is acting as master.
Yeah.
And it is modeled after the Grand Lodge, right? Because when a past Grand Master sits in or acts for the Grand Master, he wears his past Grand Master's regalia, not the Grand Master's regalia. But this did not pass. So what do you guys think about it? I kind of wanted it to pass because I just like bling, but...
Well, wasn't this one withdrawn?
Oh, yeah.
Was it?
What?
It was withdrawn,
Was it withdrawn? Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
But it was very strange to see that get withdrawn because there was... what was the explanation behind that?
There was none. He just withdrew it.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember that now because there was a part of me that did want to see that voted and passed, because what a great way to honor a past master by giving them their own personal jewel that they could wear in lodge along with their apron.
Yeah. And it's a cool concept. And this is a existing practice in a lot of other jurisdictions.
Yeah, and I also like the manner. So say your lodge couldn't afford but to buy one to have extra in its set of jewels. So for the instance, like you said, in a degree, the master continues to wear his jewel even if he sits in the audience and he's known to be the master.
Mm-hmm. So
I thought that would have been pretty neat as well, but nowhere for the loss on that one.
So not a huge loss, but I just would have liked that to pass because it's an interesting little tidbit, and I'd have to look at, I'd have to look at the legalese of the law itself. But in every state except for Pennsylvania, if it is not explicitly forbidden, it is permitted, right? So in Pennsylvania, it's the other way around, right? If it's not written down, it's not allowed. But here in Texas, depending on the verbiage of the law, you might still be able to do that. But I'd have to actually go back and look at that with a highlighter and a pencil. So,
yeah, because I don't think it would be against the law to wear one just like at a stated meeting and a past master sitting in the audience. Mm-hmm. I'm not for sure about conferring a degree though. I think if you're conferring, you have to be wearing the square.
Yeah. Well, what if you wear a square that has the 47th problem of Euclid hanging under it? That is a past master's jewel of some form, and it's still technically a square. But that's food to chew. That's food to chew on for later. Let's talk about the next resolution. Resolution number 3 was just a time. I think this passed, right? It was just a rephrasing of when dues are considered to be current. Resolution number 4 was interesting. This was the one that said, hey, only members of the lodge are allowed to vote on balloting on petitions for the 3 degrees, for affiliation, for... Yeah, basically it was basically anything to do with joining the lodge, whether as a new candidate or as an affiliate. Yeah, only members of the lodge can vote. Yeah, that was the proposition. And this one, it didn't pass. It did not pass. Yeah, I remember thinking that was kind of weird.
And I think the current language is that if you are a member of a Texas lodge, you may vote, but if you're a member of the lodge, you must vote. And I think that's the difference there. I think this was really just a matter of some lodges didn't want other lodges to come in and say who they could have be a member.
Yeah.
Right. And but I mean, how often does that happen, right?
Well, more often than you'd think. But that's the thing,
Really?
is that we have to really emphasize the sanctity of that voting, because we have a responsibility of it, and we're backed up against the wall here in Texas with needing 3 black cubes.
Mm.
And I'm really leaning towards going back towards 1. Whether we're ready for that or not, I don't know. But it's hard to keep people out that shouldn't be in when you got to drop 3 black cubes. But if somebody knows something about a member, joining, or about somebody joining your lodge, and they're not a member, they need to have the right to come in and keep him out for our own good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was kind of one of the examples that I brought up to somebody. Was I said, hey, listen, like, yeah, we run this risk of people invading other lodges and stuff like that, but what happens if you're at a stated meeting or whatever, and you recognize somebody who, maybe had even approached you about being a Mason. You said, man, I don't think you're a good fit. And they went to a different lodge instead.
Yeah.
Because that's happened. That's definitely happened.
No, and, that's the whole reason why we can't publish entered apprentices or fellowcraft's name in any kind of publication, because, somebody'd have some private quarrel with somebody, and they, oh, look over there at so-and-so lodge. They're initiating that old boy that, bested me in the basketball game, and I'm going to stop his advancement.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, but if there's a law there, it's because something was being abused.
Yeah. Now I can definitely see the argument for bringing this law into place if we went back to 1 black cube. But that's a different sort of totally different framework. So
well, and so personally, when I visit other lodges and they have balloting on new members or petitions for affiliation or anything like that, I usually refrain from voting, even though I am a Texas Mason.
And I may vote.
Just out of respect. Right. But if I knew that person and I knew that they were, they didn't have the moral characteristics or something else about them, I may actually be tempted to stand up. If I had something weighing on my conscience that was like, no, this person I know for a fact would not make a good Mason, I may actually be tempted to stand up and vote.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I would hope you would.
If anything, it would be your duty to vote.
Exactly. And I'm with you guys. When I go visit a lodge and they vote, I don't vote.
It's weird.
Well, and I have seen a vote kind of go sour when I was visiting a lodge. I just happened to not vote. I just sat there while other visitors did, and things kind of got a little sideways. And there they were, caught up in the middle of it. And I was like, you know what? I'm never going to vote in a visiting lodge unless I have to.
Yeah. Just awkward.
It is. The right's there for a reason, but you don't have to exercise it every time.
Yeah. So let's talk about resolution number 5, because this one really was kind of a little bit of a humdinger. I think people did get kind of, emotional about this one, and it was a good thing that people got emotional about this one. But basically and I'm trying to find the way to phrase this as neutrally as possible. But
I don't know that there
basically, this resolution,
it's hard.
It was proposed by our late dear Right Worshipful Leonard Harvey, who was a past Grand Master of the Grand Lodge, and the resolution was that if you are considered to be a Mason laboring under, what was it? His status, if a Mason is a Mason laboring under Masonic disciplinary action, basically you haven't gone to trial yet, and it hasn't yet to be confirmed or overturned or anything like that. You would be considered. You would have to be removed from lodge if the violations or the disciplinary actions had to do with conduct violations having to do with the abuse of a child or sexual misconduct. Now, the big thing for this was that the whole purpose of a Masonic trial is to bring the evidence and determine whether you're guilty or not guilty. So, in effect, this would waive the requirement of giving somebody due process if the accusations were of child abuse or sexual misconduct.
Right.
And this, and in my opinion, now this is going forwards, this is all my opinion, this rightfully upset a lot of people. And a lot of people stood up and talked against it, including Right Worshipful Patterson, who is a judge, and he said, hey, I see guys all the time, they walk in and I know they're guilty of sin, but I still give them due process, and it was a very powerful, emotional speech, and he was kind of scary up there. It was great.
Well, it's one of those touchy subjects when you're talking about kids,
Yeah.
But there, that's the thing. There are times to where they're unfounded charges.
And it's not often, but,
they get exonerated. But that was definitely a tough one. But I think we have to kind of stand past that, or stand to that, timeless lesson of justice, due process.
Right. The accusation itself isn't guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And while obviously, you should treat that person with, let's say, care and maybe suspicion, right?
Right.
You don't punish them in advance.
Well, you're not going to be able to stop human nature.
So,
if somebody's accused of hurting a kid,
but you shouldn't officially punish. You shouldn't legally punish them in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, when Right Worshipful Orville O'Neill came up to discuss, to close the discussion on the bill, since he was a co-author, he mentioned that Right Worshipful Harvey authored the resolution due to a situation that was happening in his own lodge. And that's really something that should be handled at the lodge level, not at the state level. So it this is not meant necessarily as a criticism or anything like that, but this is an encouragement. Brethren, please don't author resolutions to try and solve problems that exist in your own backyard.
Yeah, no, and while I totally understand the reasoning behind the resolution, it is one of those things that it's better dealt at home, and handled in that manner. Yeah.
So this one was a really touchy one, and I've been trying to be really low key on that one, but that was we say Grand Lodge was boring, but this one was a zinger.
Yeah, that one was pretty fun to listen to, and it didn't pass, of course, to where they still have due process.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, it was very soundly defeated. So
I don't remember.
So let's talk about resolution number 6. This one was very simple. It passed. It basically,
that was house cleaning.
It was house cleaning. If you are a Mason laboring under disciplinary action, you could not be installed as an officer, but nobody said anything about being elected or appointed to office. So this is just a little cleanup. So now you can't be elected or appointed because you won't have the problem of we elected this guy, but he cannot legally be installed. What's up? So it passed. It was just house cleaning. Resolution 7 was just house cleaning. It was a merger of 2 districts down in Brownsville. Let's see. Resolution number 8. This one was kind of interesting. It was and this passed. It had to do with lost limbs and prosthetic devices.
Mm-hmm.
It passed, and basically it said, hey, we don't need to file for the, what do you call it?
To get permission.
Yeah, you don't need to get a dispensation to initiate a brother who has lost a limb.
Yeah. No, and the whole reasoning because that is very very old. In operative masonry, if you were missing a leg, obviously you couldn't move stones, so you couldn't become a stonemason. And then as times changed and we became speculative, there was a point in history to where you needed all your limbs to earn a living. So if you initiated somebody that didn't have an arm or a leg, there's a good chance they couldn't earn a living and would become a burden to the fraternity. So there had to be special things put in place. But now, with the technology of prosthetic limbs, and you can have jobs cater to disabilities so well now that you don't have to walk to earn a living anymore.
Yeah. So this was just fixing something that had kind of, for the 21st century, it kind of had to be fixed. My only beef with it is from a ritualistic standpoint. That's about it.
That was the only thing that's hard to let go too, is just the tradition of it. But when I was DDGM, I went through that process, and there was no need. As a veteran that had lost his legs and had prosthetics, you'd never know that he had prosthetics unless he told you, or he wore shorts. But it was a great guy. I mean, just a stellar guy, and it slowed his process down by about 3 months.
Yeah, so that doesn't need to be happening. So
no, it's not necessary.
Yeah, but it was let me put it this way. It was a good thing, but it was a little bit of a weird thing because it kind of makes you think about it. So
yeah,
it's not a bad thing though. The resolution number 9. This one was kind of interesting. Who may preside during the conferral of degrees? It basically says, it clarifies about who can preside over a degree, and it says any entered apprentice mason can work in a entered apprentice mason degree except for the worshipful master. Any fellowcraft can do any entered apprentice degree or fellowcraft degree except for the position of the worshipful master. And
it just made the law we have now more wordy.
Yeah,
it changed nothing.
And this passed, right?
No,
it didn't pass. Okay, See, my biggest beef with this is that it says provided that only the work approved by the committee on work shall be used, and it's kind of implied that if you're in Texas, you're going to be using the work used by the committee on work. But to me, that kind of going back to that. If it's not explicitly forbidden, then it's allowed. Versus the idea of it's only allowed if it's written. I'm much more in favor of permissiveness, right? And if you did something wrong, we'll address that, right? But for now, let's give guys a framework to work off of, and then be more flexible, as long as they're doing the ritual correctly.
No, and that really would have begged the question. Like the long form lecture, the committee on work, would they allow that?
I'm sure they would, but it raises more questions than it answers.
Yeah. So
that didn't pass. Resolution number 10. This was to do with the Grand Lodge Assistance Fund for brotherly relief, because currently, not currently, but as of before the 2018 Grand Lodge session, brother relief was only available to brothers suffering from tuberculosis or any other malignant or incurable disease. Now, this passed, and we learned this from the experiences we had this year with Hurricane Harvey. It says, substantial brethren in good standing or members of the family suffering substantial financial hardship resulting from malignant or incurable disease, natural calamity, or other temporary and emergency hardship as the committee may determine. And that's a really awesome, positive change. So,
yeah, that gives them a lot more flexibility.
So, and
I hate to say it, but tuberculosis is not really the killer it used to be back in the day.
Yeah, it still sucks, but
right. It's nowhere near as common anymore.
Yeah. It's actually, now it's actually really rare. Resolution number 11. This was interesting. It basically said it was a vote to add basically up until Grand Lodge sessions of 2018, you could not disclose information in an open lodge regarding a candidate after the investigative committee has investigated the candidate and delivered their report. Now, this passed by 2 votes, by the way, brethren. Your votes matter. Whether
they do.
For better or for worse, your votes matter. This passed by 2 votes. Should a Mason qualified to vote possess additional information pertaining to the qualifications of the petitioner that is based upon the Mason's personal knowledge and not hearsay, he may request the Worshipful Master's permission to vote to provide said additional information in open lodge before the committee is discharged and the ballot is taken. So you do have to ask the Worshipful Master's permission, but this changes kind of the way things used to be done. One of the examples that was brought up was, what if you miss one stated meeting and somebody's petition gets accepted, and then, you get to the next meeting and you find out that this person's petition was accepted and they're voting on the investigative committee's report, right? Why are you not, obviously, people miss stated meetings.
Yeah.
Why isn't your lodge telling you stuff? Why aren't you communicating about things? Obviously, you can't publish the candidate's name, but you can talk to people in person, or you should kind of know, or did you not know that this person was going to petition your lodge? If y'all take petitions from strangers, expect problems. So,
no,
I don't know.
And there's nowadays, you still do get some petitions from somebody's son that you're going to run through at a fairly fast rate. But nowadays, the process should take a lot longer than 2 months. I mean, really, truly, even if it is somebody's son, they need more than 2 months to get to know the people at lodge and what he's getting into.
Their son should be coming up to lodge with them,
Yeah, and hanging out and stuff. But, that case right there, more than likely, is going to be a stranger, by and large, to the lodge, just to where it needed to be a lot longer than 2 months.
Yeah. So to me, this is another instance of people trying to clear up problems in their backyard by making state law.
And because we don't do one black cube anymore.
Yeah, and that's true. That's true.
It wouldn't be an issue if we did.
If we brought back one black cube, we wouldn't have that problem necessarily. But you could also get to know your candidates beforehand and talk to the other brethren before the investigative committee makes a report. So, guys, if you follow best practices, you won't have these problems.
Very rarely, if ever, anyway.
Yeah.
Guard the West Gate, right?
Yeah.
Don't be in a rush to add a brother just because you feel you need to add brothers. Get to know them because you're taking them on as an actual brother for life,
Mm-hmm. You can't undo this.
Right.
So it's really, really, really hard.
Yeah. So just, I don't know that. And I know that this is a little bit of a soapbox moment for me, but really, no. Resolution 12 was, kind of a little bit of housekeeping, but it involved several past grands getting mad at each other, which was kind of interesting. I'm not going to say get mad at each other, but it was involving the how the investments and how the money is distributed for the retirement fund for the Grand Lodge Employee Retirement Program, and it wasn't terribly interesting, but it also wasn't pretty. So there was some disagreement on that.
But that one, it wouldn't affect us one way or another, because I'm pretty for sure it did pass, and it was just a shifting of 2 cents or something like that.
Right. So, Resolution 13, this was pure housekeeping. It was just shifting some dates that had to do with bookkeeping for the secretary. Now we close the books on the first day of January instead of the first day of November. Resolution 14, this passed. I thought this was kind of interesting because I didn't think you really needed I didn't think you needed permission to do this, really. But now it says, hey, a lodge can take credit cards for dues, which many lodges have already been doing for a long, long time, because it wasn't It was not explicitly forbidden, therefore it was permitted, right?
Well, in the way,
but
I
now
don't
we're
recall
allowed,
exactly
so.
the way the law is worded about paying your dues, but it kind of roundabout implies that it has to be monies, like almost they wouldn't take a check kind of thing. And some people raised a little fuss about taking credit cards online. So I think that's really what inspired this resolution to make it final.
So to me, this is just one of those things that, the more we could have talked about this more and done education on the subject instead of passing a law. But there was one minor note that was brought up. You can't, in Texas, you can't charge a service fee for credit cards, but you can charge a convenience fee. It's interesting. And since lodges are not businesses, they are considered nonprofit institutions, you can. But in order to stay well in the clear, any language regarding service fees was removed through an amendment.
Yeah.
So resolution number 15 had to do with the Lodge of Sorrow and guys whose families didn't want them to have Masonic burials and stuff. This had to do with listing names of deceased brethren during a Lodge of Sorrow, and it was kind of, it had to do with guys that didn't get Masonic funerals for whatever reason, but still mention them in Lodge.
Yeah. Yeah, submit their names in the minutes for the Lodge of Sorrow, which, they should be in the minutes anyway. If you got word they passed, then that should go in the minutes when you drape your charter or redrape, however it is. But it just, I guess, provided a place to quickly find who passed away that year.
So for Resolution 16, this had to do with the guidelines for the Golden Trowel Award. And it basically says that, hey, the guidelines and all that are kind of harder to get to, and it's not really clear on where to find them. I wanted to ask Rhit your opinion specifically on this, because somebody brought up the example that more than a couple of times, the person who's been awarded the Golden Trowel in a lodge is the sitting secretary. But because all of that information is stuff that only the secretary can file, he's got to do the Golden Trowel for himself and everything. Since you're the sitting secretary of the lodge, how do you feel about this one?
I guess it's neat to make that a surprise in a way of some sorts, but in the end, it has to be pre-planned. Who you're giving the Golden Trowel, you need to give them a chance to invite their family, and all that kind of stuff, to where how big of a surprise, whatever. But in the end, I think those forms should be accessible to the general population. Yeah, which I think that's going to change here pretty quick in the future. Yeah, with the new website.
And this added it to the Masonic Forum section, right? So now when you go to the Golden Trowel form in the Grand Lodge Law Book, the qualifications for it are right there, right? Or will be right there. But before, you had to look it up in the Secretary's database to see whether or not somebody was eligible for it.
And eligible to even be on the committee to select it, because they're pretty specific on that as well.
I did not know that. What? Yeah. Do you remember offhand what the qualifications for being on the committee are?
I'm pretty for sure it says the 3 most current past masters up to 5 years after serving.
Okay. Huh. I had no idea.
If the guy, like for instance me, I was in the East 7 years ago, I believe I couldn't serve on a Golden Trowel picking a committee. That's why you need those rules quick and easy. And I'm fuzzy on that, because we gave our first Golden Trowel away in it's been 8 years.
Yeah, that was cool. And of course, to our past master Billy Moore, Rhit's dad.
Yes, that was fun.
So let's see. Resolution 17. This one there was a bit of discussion on. You said you made an interesting comment that no secretary of a lodge would vote for this one.
Yeah, maybe I was wrong, but
no, it had to do with moving up the date for basically if to suspend somebody automatically. If they haven't paid by right now, it's June 22nd. They wanted to move it up to February 1st, which gives people a window of a month instead of 6 months.
Yeah.
So
Right. And I was thinking about this one, and maybe it was written without taking into account the resolution to move the year to January 1st. Maybe this was written with the understanding that it was at the end of the year, and so it would give several months.
Could have been, but it's been this way for 2 years now, and this resolution was just submitted. So, but I think, and maybe some secretaries were for it. So after February 1st, they didn't have to try to chase anybody down. But if you're doing this right, you should have a committee that calls people that are not paying their dues, and try to figure out if they need help, all that kind of stuff. And to do that in 1 month, it's tough, because your dues are due January 1st, and it runs January to December. And a lot of Masons think it runs June to June.
yeah, and that's not quite true.
No, it's not true at all. Because by June, I've contacted you 3 times, and by mail, and probably called you a few times. So, it would cut out on that. But, my thing is, as a secretary, I'm not looking to suspend anybody. So I want as much time as I can get to try to make it easier on the brother to stay current.
Right. And
so I was glad to see that one.
Makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, it does. Gives us a little more time breathing room.
Yeah. So for anyone that's wondering, this did not pass. So
yeah.
So resolution 18, it was just a redistricting. It passed. It was just it was redistricting. Yeah. Grandmaster's recommendation number 1. This is interesting. Basically, you used to have to be a district instructor. To be a district instructor, you had to be a past master, because it said, qualified members of Grand Lodge can serve as district instructors, and only past masters are members of Grand Lodge. And now it says qualified members of Grand Lodge or brothers who are proficient in the esoteric work and lectures of the first 3 degrees in Masonry.
Yeah.
And so that passed pretty well. And now if you can, prove that you're worth your salt, and you've got the recommendation of the incoming Grandmaster, you can serve as a DI even if you've never been the master of a lodge. And that's a good thing. So,
right. And this makes sense, right? Because some guys are really into it. I mean, they're great ritualists, but they really don't have an interest in running through the chairs. So this allows them to spread their knowledge, throughout their district.
Yep.
No, in a perfect world, I would love to see it be past masters as DIs, because, they, as a past master, you have a little more experience in running the administrative side and can answer a few more questions. Although the DI is only there to teach you work, you may ask him another question while he's there, that is outside that scope. But we're not there right now.
Yeah.
Okay. There are people serving on that are, I don't know a nice way to put it, that
yeah,
just kind of the pool to draw from got pretty short, and there are qualified guys out there that aren't past masters and have no desire to be. So we need it right now.
Yeah. So that was a good one to see. Grandmaster's recommendation number 2. This one was kind of interesting. It basically said that after a year, when the eligibility, or basically your legal status as an entered apprentice or fellowcraft has lapsed, you would have to pay $20 to become or to file a petition for advancement, right? And there were a bunch of amendments to it, right? It was 2 amendments.
Right, there was like 2 amendments and like a clarification, a rewording, and it was voted on a total of like 3 times.
And so that's kind of unusual. What drove me up the wall was that they still had a fixed amount for this. They said, "Hey, $20," and they came back with, the resolution was or the recommendation was proposed. The first amendment was made, and it still said $20, right? And then they came back with the second amendment, and it said instead of $20, it said $50, right? And I'm going,
Right.
And I'm just going, man, how about a amount determined by the lodge? But nope, it's a fixed $50, and the lodge doesn't have a choice in it. So,
yeah, there was a couple of things that I mean, really, truly, I didn't like the whole thing. While I understand the sentiment, it's one of those things that should have been taken care of in house, because now, if you have an EA that goes past their year, you can no longer instruct them. And I still have questions if we could do Masonic funeral. But he has to be reinvestigated after a year before he can be instructed.
Hold on. I thought this was no, it's for 3 years or more. If he has to be reinvestigated after 3 years. So he has to pay the money to get a petition for advancement, right? Each year, and then after 3 years, he has to get reinvestigated. So
is it 3 years?
Yeah. So it's a 1 year cycle for basically your entered apprentices are paying dues now.
Right.
It's not exactly what it is, but it's an annual fine for being an entered apprentice instead of a master mason. Or a fellowcraft, instead of a master mason. So, but I would have loved to see the verbiage $0 or more, right? Sure, if you want to make all of those, that they have to file the petition for readvancement and get investigated every 3 years and everything, cool. But leave it up to the lodges what to charge, So this is just, it takes away our autonomy as lodges, and that is very frustrating.
Well, and I know there's lodges out there that encourage their entered apprentices to take over a year in their advancement, really let them marinate in it. And then, you take it to the flip side, we've got a problem with entered apprentices not advancing. What better way to get them back than charge them a fee, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know. To me, this seemed very cash grabby, but it should have been left up to the lodge as to what to charge.
And I think, at least from the sentiment I was gathering from the recommendation when Grandmaster was talking about it, is that it really all kind of stemmed from reinvestigating these guys after 3 years, and is this still the same person
and that's
that they were when
fair.
they joined? I love that idea.
I love that idea. I just think it should have been separate from the money.
Well, again, shouldn't your lodge be doing that in the first place? I mean, why did we need a law to require that?
And I think part of that is, your petition for advancement, the lodge can vote that down.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So
and what happens after that?
In a certain sense, if you're keeping in touch with this guy, why do you need to do that? So,
absolutely. And even if you don't, there is no law that says he can't be reinvestigated. You know what I'm saying? Because any petition of advancement, only one member has to stand up and say, I want this guy reinvestigated, and it has to take place. But, if he hadn't shown up in 3 years and comes back, you could start working on the work, but you better get to know this guy.
Yeah. So it was just one of those things that I had a hard time. Like, I understand the sentiment, but I have a really hard time with the verbiage of the law, because it puts it, it causes difficulties for us. So
no, and this is a good example of educate, don't legislate. Because if we were really promoting the aspects of guarding our west gates on all front, whether it be petitions of advancement, affiliations, they would have already known what to do, and this wouldn't be required.
I find it actually really funny that you say educate, don't legislate, because when I was out in parking, right, I parked behind a pickup truck, and it had an interesting bumper sticker on it. The bumper sticker was the Texas flag, but instead of the 5-pointed star, it had the square and compasses on it. And in the white and red of the Texas flag, it says education, not regulation. And I'll send y'all a picture after the show is concluded to prove this, because I took a picture of it. And I just find it very funny that you're saying education, not legislation. I'm going, that's literally a bumper sticker with a square and compasses on it. I guess somebody feels the same way. So,
well, and it's the truth, that we have kind of backed ourselves into a corner of or a norm in our craft of making laws, instead of just saying, hey, here's the right thing to do, and let's make it happen. We legislate everything, and we could have just inspired folks to guard that West Gate a little better.
Yeah. So that was the resolutions and recommendations. Overall, it was good. Nothing was crazily contentious, but there were a couple of hot button subjects, as evidenced by the fact that we spent almost an hour talking about just resolutions and recommendations.
Right.
But let's talk about the fraternal side of things. There's three big subjects, right? Two of them I want to talk about together, right? It's the backyard and the 64th District breakfast, and then we have our own little private event coming up. But we'll save that for the end of the show. Guys, let's talk about the backyard first. What did y'all think?
Oh, phenomenal. Waco 92,
Amazing, yeah.
Knocking it out of the park. We got there a little early and ate some dinner before the crowd got there, but by about 9:30, that place had filled up. Brandon Jenkins came on and was rocking the stage. And again, this year, got a chance to talk to guys from across the state, met many new guys, and got a lot of good ideas on how to do things. So, I mean, that there's so much work that gets done right there in that little backyard.
Yeah, and it was really cool.
No, and I wish there were more opportunities like that. Because when you have that kind of impromptu meeting of the minds where we all get together and start talking about the craft, inspiration starts bubbling up, and ideas start flying around the room. And next thing you know, one hits you in the head that you take back to your lodge, and you and your lodge are better for it.
Yeah, that was really, and the ideas are buzzing around, and you can see masonry growing. It's cool because those fast forwarded videos, the time lapse videos of like where you see a seed sprouting into a plant and then growing into a flower. It felt like that, but in real time. You can just see it happening. You're just like, oh man, this is so cool.
I'm absolutely.
And and I'm not going to specify any names just because it's not totally relevant and I don't want to name drop, right? But so I had one brother approach me, hey, you told me about brother so-and-so who could help me with this idea. Like, where is this guy? What does he look like? Can we talk about this all together? And so I dragged him over and I introduced them to each other because it was a really good idea that needed to happen. And I got a phone call today about it and said, hey, like, I'm thinking about this idea. I really liked it. Let's make this happen, and it's, that's cool, So,
no,
you can start your own ideas. You can put your own ideas into motion. You can help other people with their ideas. You can change things instantly and for the better. So it was a good old party too.
No, absolutely. Well done. It's a great venue. We plenty warm around the fires. They had Hiram and Solomon cigars out there and a few other vendors. So folks were smoking cigars, eating barbecue, drinking beer. Had a blast.
Yeah. The only downside of that was trying to get up in time for the 6 a.m. breakfast the next morning.
Yeah. Let's talk about that 6 a.m. breakfast because, ouch. I actually got a good amount of sleep at Grand Lodge this year. I got 4.5 hours of sleep, so I count myself lucky.
Yeah. No, that 6 a.m. breakfast it's special for me because when I first started going to Grand Lodge 9 years ago, there was nothing social that I knew of as a young Mason outside of that. So that was my one and only chance to get to see all my brothers from around the district. And past Grand Masters and people in the Grand Line will come there and eat before they hit Grand Lodge.
Guys that made themselves available.
Yeah, made themselves available. And then, of course, all crescendos into being introduced to our new district deputies for the 64th, because it's the MWSA of the 64th that puts that on.
So, and just a note, if you plan on going next year, there are actually 2 Georges right next to each other. If you go to the bar and grill, that's the wrong one. I accidentally walked into District 40's breakfast before I was told ours was across the street. Yeah,
We're
in the banquet hall.
So
Ken was the one who keyed me into, you may want to be across the street.
Yeah, so the trick there is, for Grand Chapter and Grand Council, you want to go to George's Bar and Grill. For Grand Lodge, if you are in the 64th District, you go to the George's Bar and Grill Banquet Hall. So,
right.
But, that one, it'd be a hard party to crash because there's nowhere to sit. Like, I showed up, 10 minutes late because Chris and I were struggling to wake up. And man, it was packed. Like, we were lucky to get seats.
Yeah, there might have been maybe 15, 20 seats left.
Not even that.
But we'd make room because we'd eat quick and get up and let somebody else sit down. Because it hasn't always been at George's and used to be a lot bigger. Of course, there used to be a lot more membership, but I still think that's kind of a special moment to come together and hang out before Grand Lodge, as early as it is. And they, for years and years, Claire Billington and James Kirkpatrick had emceed that event. But next year, it looks like it's going to be yours truly and Dave Kisselberg.
Oh, well, how
right,
about
worshipful
that?
Dave Kisselberg.
Yeah, congrats to David.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool. I'm really happy for him.
Yeah.
And then Sam Reed is going to be the district deputy grand master for our district, 64A, and I have a particular fondness for Sam. He is a past high priest and TIM of Texas chapter and council. So,
great guy, fantastic man.
Yeah. So, and he's the junior past commander of Worth Commandery. The social aspects of Grand Lodge were really quite excellent. So we wanted to talk about our own little social event. We saved this for the end of the podcast, and I'm going to try and keep us from running too long on it. But MasoniCon. What, who, where, when, why, how? Let's talk about this. What is MasoniCon?
So officially, we're calling it Texas MasoniCon because Massachusetts had started MasoniCon 3 or 4 years ago, and that's what they call it, MasoniCon.
Right. So this is Texas MasoniCon. My bad.
Exactly.
Okay.
Texas kind of implying bigger, which hopefully we get there.
Now, Rhit, we don't need to sow discord with our brethren from other jurisdictions.
No, that it really and truly, their name inspired me. So I just tried to find a way to piggyback off of ride their coattails in success. So,
and it makes sense. It's a Masonic convention, MasoniCon. So
exactly.
It just happens to be in Texas. So
it's kind of an idea that crescendoed out of many. One of it being us not having enough opportunities to get together on the social end of things, because this will bring guys from already all over the country, not just the state. We've already got guys buying tickets from across the country to come in for quality education, because we started that in our lodge, and the effects from it were much broader than I anticipated. So it's like, man, we need to up this game here, and which we did. We started bringing in better and better speakers, and the results were better and better, to where eventually we were like, man, we got to share this. Yeah. And we have the venue. We meet in a beautiful temple that, has parking, has places to meet and different rooms. So it just kind of became almost felt like a responsibility, we've got a ballroom that'll seat over 500. So therein lied or was born the idea. But the trick was pulling it off. This is what our plan is to make this an all-day event to where we've got 9 speakers lined up, 3 keynotes, 6 breakout speakers, to where you'll go and listen to a variety of Masonic topics.
And vendors.
Yes.
And vendors. Yes.
Yeah. I think, what are we up to? We already got 5. And I mean, we just went live with this Thursday at midnight. So I guess Friday morning.
Yeah, it's pretty good. We've got, for our keynote speakers, everything is scheduled and subject to change. But, right now, it looks like our little army of speakers is Michael Pohl, who is the author of Masonic Enlightenment. He's also the owner of Cornerstone Book Publishers. Piers Vaughn, who is the author of the Capitular Development Course, among other books. He is the past Grand High Priest of the Royal Arch of New York State. Chuck Dunning Jr., who is the author of Contemplative Masonry, and he is the Charter Superintendent of the Academy of Reflection in Guthrie, Oklahoma, among other things. And our breakout speakers are Brad Billings, Pete Normand, Roberto Sanchez, John Tolbert, David Bindle, and Larry Fitzpatrick. You may have heard of some of those names. So
yes,
some of these guys have been on our podcast. So
yeah, I mean, all the keynotes are authors. A lot of the breakout speakers are authors and have books, which will be there for sale.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
And even those that haven't written a book yet, I would say, have extensive research and are very, very good speakers.
Right. We have a couple of past masters of the Texas Lodge of Research that will be breakout speakers.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of awesome information, very knowledgeable speakers that will be there all day long.
You're right about that. I think half of them are, because I know, is Roberto a past master of that?
I'm not sure.
I don't believe so. I know he was once an officer. I'd have to look into that.
Well, members anyways, because I know Roberto is, I know Brad, and I know Pete are all members. Not for sure about Larry Fitzpatrick, although he's the chairman of the Grand Lodge Education Committee. So, some of these guys were flying in from across the country. Some of them are driving in from across the state. We're covering all those costs and bringing in all these guys to where we can, in one day, come in and just get loaded up with plenty of Masonic knowledge to think about.
So, Rhit, where is this going to be? Where are we having this amazing event?
It's going to be at the Fort Worth Masonic Temple, downtown Fort Worth.
What a surprise.
Exactly. 1100 Henderson Street, which we have a website with details at texasmasonicon.com. But it'll be Saturday, September 15th.
From 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yep, we're going to start check-in about 7 o'clock, to where you come in and get signed up and get all the bracelets or whatever you need to get into your classes.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. A lot of this, we're still finalizing details. We've had people reach out to us for some administrative stuff, and we're saying, hey, we're still hammering this out, but we'll let you know as soon as possible. So you're going to have bracelets or lanyards or something. There will be something to identify you as an attendee, so don't worry about that.
Exactly. I mean, because this really does all boil down to interest. If we have 100 folks buy tickets, it's going to happen a certain way. If we have 350 or more, it's going to happen another way, which those details will come as we have folks signing up.
Yeah. And our target attendance right now is 150 or more, right?
That's our break even. Yeah. After all the expenses, because the whole idea of this is for it to self-sustain and perpetuate yearly, because it's quite an investment to fly all these guys in and take care of them and hotels and all that. But if we could, get to that break even and grow a little bit to where we can reinvest any profits back into it and make it bigger and better every year.
Because we want to eventually move to a format where we could, if you send us a copy of your dues card or something like that, we could send a digital version to you or something like that.
Exactly.
That's way off into the planning phase. But right now, we just want to make a big awesome event where people can get educated and meet other people, obviously. One of the things that we were kind of struggling with was that we saw that, hey, we're providing this amazing education for our guys, but it seems like in Masonry, I don't want to generalize for Masonry as a whole, but at least for Masonry in my experience, that is not the norm. It is not the norm to provide amazing education. And we want to try and change that. And so this is our effort to try and improve things on a statewide scale. So, we're just really excited, and we have an idea, and we are taking this football and we are running with it.
Yeah, and the bottom line is we're having a blast doing it, because this isn't, if it all ends up that when we started this, if it was just us 148 guys there and it failed, we were going to have a great time listening to those speakers and, regroup and try something different next year. But if this thing's successful, it could grow into a multi-day event. There's no telling where we could go with it, because I really feel like, especially with the feedback we've gotten so far, that guys are hungry for this, and we're going to be able to make it, get it perpetuate to where we can have another big event to look forward to.
Right. And I am very optimistic about this. So for details on this, TexasMasonicon.com. Our Facebook is Texas MasoniCon. Our Instagram is Texas MasoniCon, and our info is info@TexasMasonicon.com.
I was going to say, we did set ticket prices at pre-purchase of $45, which is going to cover a lunch for you. And like I say, hopefully, if we get enough there, we'll cover all the expenses to where we can do this thing again year after year. Because while our lodge is lucky to have the money to invest in it, it doesn't have the money to perpetuate it. Yeah. So it's got to become self-perpetuating.
Yeah, we're hoping to split this off into a separate entity. So we want this for guys to get involved, regardless of whether it's attached to our lodge or not. Just people who are passionate about education and spreading light.
But, and of course, if you have to buy them at the door, the price goes up $10.
Yes. So pre-order tickets are $45. Door tickets are $55. You can pre-order until August 15th. That is when August 15th is when the pre-orders close. And that the reason for that is so that when we have the event on September 15th, we already have a good idea of how many people are going to be there and how we're going to divide the speaker tracks and have, because we're going to have to split people up to see all the speakers at once. So basically, we want to make sure that the speaker doesn't have to talk to several hundred people at once, that he's only, each speaker is only talking to maybe a couple dozen people at each time. So this way we can divide groups up. We can have smaller, more intimate audiences. It's, so please pre-order, not just because it's $10 cheaper, but also because it makes our lives easier. So
yeah, absolutely. And, I didn't think we'd run into an issue of, running out of tickets, but with the feedback we're getting as quickly as we have, that's a distinct possibility that there is a number that we will sell out at. And once we're sold out, we can't fit any more people in that temple, and that could happen too. So don't let yourself, wait to, I'm just going to buy it at the door and it gets sold out and you miss it.
Yeah. And based off of costs and fire codes and stuff like that, we have a general idea of how many people we want to cap this off of. I'm not going to disclose that on air just because we haven't finalized that number or anything like that, and we'll just let people know when it's sold out instead. But,
we'll let you know when we're getting close.
Yeah. So this week, we wanted to move on to the Fraternal Quote of the Week. Don't want to keep you hanging for too long. This week's Fraternal Quote is, "If you want to know where the future of Freemasonry will grow and prosper, it's simple. In your heart, in my heart, and in the hearts of those who follow it." That it was said by Most Worshipful Conrad Hahn, past Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Connecticut.
I like it, because I think we've kind of lost sight that Freemasonry is an introspective journey. It's all about you and in self-improvement. doesn't matter if your lodge improves or if our Grand Lodge does. If you're improving, things are going to get better for you. And if we're all doing that, making our fraternity is just going to be a byproduct.
Yeah, that's one of the big things that's kind of been reinforced for me by attending Grand Lodge. What I'm passionate about is something that many other people are passionate about, and the changes that we are trying to make on a micro scale are benefiting us all as a whole. And this is why I want to get more involved with things like Texas MasoniCon and going to Grand Lodge and stuff, because you know what? Every person is their own individual, but together we are a mighty force.
You got it. Absolutely.
So at this time, Billy had to run off to a family commitment, so we will not be able to have his closing thoughts. But Rhit, what are your closing thoughts on this episode?
Well, for me, I really just want to emphasize how important it is to be at Grand Lodge. You know, even if you're not a past master or voting member or representative, it's important to go down there and kind of keep a pulse on what's going on in your fraternity. But also, it's just a great chance to get to know folks from across the state as well, and enough to kind of work your schedule around to where you can be down there at Grand Lodge on those meaty business days to see what's going on. Now, if you have the right to vote as a past master, you need to do everything you can to be down there. I mean, that resolution that passed by 2 votes just really drove home to me how important it was, because one lodge vote that counts for 3 could have changed the outcome of that resolution. So, you know, it's important for us all to be there.
Yeah.
So, you know,
and it's
make
important
plans.
to read resolutions beforehand, make sure that you know what you're voting on.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So, and I've kind of already said what I wanted to say in regards to Grand Lodge, but I'm going to go every year that I can, you know, barring sickness or family emergencies or whatever. You know, this is just, it's an incredible experience. And I mean, same thing for Grand Chapter and Council, because I've really enjoyed that last time too.
Yeah.
But the Grand Convention, you know, the Grand Communications are really special, and I'm looking forward to Grand Commandery in April. So we'll see how this goes. But folks, if you'd like to contact us, we are found at www.fortworth148.org. We are at Fort Worth Lodge 148 on Facebook. Our email is info148@fortworth148.org. And if you live in the 64th District of the Grand Lodge of Texas and you want to promote an event, please reach out to them at 64th.org. That's 64th.org. If you want to know more about Texas MasoniCon, we're at www.texasmasonicon.com. That's MasoniCon. So just one C. But yeah, please reach out to us. We'd love to have you over.
Absolutely. All right, Gabe. This is Rhit Moore signing off.
And this is Gabriel Jagush signing off.